Welcome back to Good Morning Sri Lanka. Now, just before the commercial break, we were having a very interesting chat with Prashant Divisa, who is the president of Sri Lanka Unites, and the work that Sri Lanka Unites actively engages in. Now, Prashant has just come back from the road trip. It's commonly nicknamed as a road trip, but it's actually a school relations tour, and we were talking a bit about that as well. Now, Prashant, if you'd just like to mention some of the main highlights of this school relations tour.
Yeah, it's always a difficult question because when you're on the road for 20 days visiting this our beautiful country,
everything happens so fast.
Everything happens so fast, and there's so many amazing memories. One, I think, is definitely the fact of being on a bus with 20 strong young leaders representing so many different communities, all the communities that Sri Lanka has to offer, and learning to live together and work together and having this common cause. You know, I was just looking around the bus one day while we were traveling, and I realized these students have nothing in common apart from their passion for the country and wanting to make a difference. Literally, they're very different, but they're all leaders. So they're leaders and they want to make an impact.
And also talking about the energy, I mean, it would have been a very fun-filled trip as well.
Extremely fun-filled trip. And you know, like, it's not, normally if you're going on a school trip, it's just we'll sing Sinhala Baila and you'll hang out. But here you got like the Tamil music, the Sinhala music, and then you some of them like to bring some Indian stuff into it, and you mix it all up and you come up with fusion, and then the dancing, the swimming in all the beaches around the country. It's absolutely a lot of fun, yes. But the most exciting thing about it, what it means, and you know, it's a lifelong memory of these students saying, I'm never going to go back to being hateful or turning the other way. I want to contribute to my country. I want to be part of the solution. Because as Sri Lanka, we have a challenge where we're very eloquent at describing the problems, but we're not very effective at proactively making a difference. And if this generation, the generation that follows us, can do that, this will be a better place, and we can be proud about it.
Now, going on with that topic, a group that has been criticized of doing that, you know, more often than not. No, I'm not saying that everyone does this, but the diaspora community, as you mentioned, you're in connection with, there are Sri Lanka Unite chapters abroad as well, and you work together with this diaspora community. Now, how important is the diaspora community in developing and also in the reconciliation process of Sri Lanka?
I think it plays a very important role, and that's why we have 7 chapters now outside the country in main cities with the highest concentration of Sri Lankans. So in Toronto, Canada, and Melbourne, Australia, in Washington DC, in Los Angeles in the US, and then we have also now emerging in Norway, in Oslo, and in Paris. Those are emerging chapters, and in London, so on and so forth. But the important thing is that we need to inspire the diaspora to get involved. The Sinhala and the Tamil community or the diaspora who are there, they still have a love for the country, they have still a love for their people, and it's important that we engage them and not demonize them and not generalize them. You know, if the diaspora is doing a mistake by demonizing all of Sri Lanka right now, we shouldn't do the same mistake and return the favor and demonize the entire diaspora. There are people who genuinely want to see the country do better, but we need to go and show them that we're serious about it, and we've seen that. You know, I don't care what their parents might have done. Maybe their parents were passionate about supporting extremist groups, but you have to give the children a new chance and say, do you want to make that same mistake? Your parents may have invested in war, but you can invest in development, you can invest in a child, you can invest in a person who has nothing compared to what you have. Or you could just complain about the situation. When you give them the choice, these are progressive, moral individuals who live outside our country, who still love our country. And so we shouldn't generalize and demonize and say it's us against them. It's not as black and white as that. It's important that we see the common humanity and work towards a better Sri Lanka.
Now, also you mentioned that some of these diaspora communities and people from it actually participated in some of the activities that you do, and also the school relations tour as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, mainly the conference. What happens is they actually take leave from work.
And then we do have a few more pictures of the school relations tour as well on the screen for you at the moment.
Yeah, so the diaspora really gets involved when they come for the conference. And in fact, they pay their own money. They come for the conference. They're part of it. And they even help sponsor a student or two. And they keep these relationships long term. So for a student from Mullaitivu, in fact those pictures are from our workshop in Mullaitivu. These are all prefects from the Mullaitivu district, and they have a friend now in Toronto, they have a friend now in London, Sri Lankans who they never knew before. And then there's this whole thing of, you know, we have this elitist society. We go to the Colombo schools, or we are like, these are some of the head prefects from Colombo schools hanging out with these students and saying, you and I are one, and I'm never going to look down on you. I'm never going to have a complex where I'm superior to you. You are. So not just the ethnic issues, we've got social issues, we have so many things that we have to deal with. And everywhere we went, we were welcomed with so much excitement by the students, just because of the experience of the conference. Like, we were given VIP treatment, and we were like, we just young people wanted to make a difference. We're not, we don't have any designations, we don't have any titles, but as you can see, we had a lot of fun as well. Now, these are people from different communities, and it's just that once you're moving in that direction, people do respond. And we concluded our road trip in Colombo with about 25 schools, prefects from the Colombo schools coming together. International schools and the government schools and private schools coming together and saying, okay, we want to make it. And the international schools here as well in Noor Elliot. Is coming together and learning the importance of saying we are going to stand together as one. We have to start becoming part of the solution. I can't mention that enough until we actually do it.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that some of the social problems were also addressed. Now, I believe in Sri Lanka, as much as we have an ethnic problem, although we say that we are done with the caste system and everything else, social problems play a big role, and there's a big segregation of the communities in that aspect as well. Now, in addressing social problems, I believe that Sri Lanka Unites take active steps in addressing some of the main social issues as well. Some of your latest projects was one named Show You Care.
Yes, when it comes to, when we say the divide, yes, there's ethnic divide, yes, there is caste and religion, and there's economic background and all sorts of things. We have had all these things that we frame people in, and we discriminate or we treat them indifferently. And another thing we can't ignore is the gender issues in Sri Lanka, and that's something that's common to all ethnic groups. Women have continued to be treated poorly, and no one can argue that. You can't say, yeah, we have a high role for the mother, therefore women are treated okay. No, there's a lot of domestic violence, there's a lot of harassment in public areas, and we can't continue to turn the other way. The Gandhian teachings of be the change you want to see has definitely inspired the work we do. And so when we saw this issue of women being harassed in public, and it happens right in front of us, day in and day out, but many young men choose to turn the other way, or worse, they're part of the problem.
Exactly.
And so we thought, why don't we start something, we call it Show You Care, Show standing for Stop Harassment of Women. And we wanted to impact the young people, because we had a large network of young men around the country, not to mention Colombo. And we said, why don't we bring them together and say, why don't you get on buses and make a difference? So literally in a week of a campaign, we had about 300 young men get on buses, and we managed to speak to over 30,000 passengers in 1,200 buses in Colombo. And we got onto the bus, and these young men, first of all, they apologized to the women on the bus, saying, we're sorry for not doing anything about this all this time. Second, they informed them of the law, that if a woman is harassed in public, the person who did the crime could be in prison for 5 years as a result of that crime. And the third thing is we gave them information on how they could get help and how they could stand up. And so those sorts of things, you can proactively engage, and we've seen an impact. And
exactly. And also, that must be news for the people who are watching, but it's not new news for me, at least, because I was part of that campaign, and it was very, very rewarding to see that a lot of people were inspired and we wanted to make an active change. Now, that's we discussed in detail about Sri Lanka Unites and the work they do, specializing in reconciliation, but also trying to address the various social problems that are prevalent in Sri Lanka as well. Now, Prashant, we have to wrap up the show now, and we're very thankful for you for being on the show.
Thank you.
And also talking about your experience in this field as well.
Yeah, really appreciate being. And for those who want to have more information, they can go on our website. It's www.srilankaunites.org. Get involved. Would love to have your help. I want to thank Mevan and the crew for having me over. Thank you.
Yes, and with that, folks, we have to wrap up today's edition of Good Morning Sri Lanka. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.